It's been said that every quilt tells a story, and it's so true. But I also believe every quilter has a story to tell. I wanted to hear about the people behind these wonderful quilts and thought you'd enjoy hearing about their lives also. Welcome to A Quilter's Life. It's never too late to learn to quilt. Juanita Roby is in her 80s and learned to quilt not even 10 years ago. I was so happy to have the opportunity to visit with Juanita and share our enjoyment of quilting. Juanita, thank you so much for joining me on A Quilter's Life. I'm excited to hear about my sister's new friend. Can you tell me how you met my sister Lois?
Yes, she came to our walk and talk that we have at our church. She came one time and they loved it. They've been coming ever since.
Yeah, they just moved to a new place, and it's so wonderful for them to be able to make new friends.
Yes, they are welcomed by all people that's there. There's about 20 of us.
Uh-huh. Is that a new thing for your church, or have your church been doing that for a long time, this walk and talk?
We've been doing it about a year.
What a nice way to get to know people.
Yes, very nice.
Well, tell us about where you were born and raised.
I was born in Campbellsville, Kentucky, but my parents moved to Louisville shortly after I was born. And so we've been in Louisville ever since.
And do you have a special childhood memory growing up in Louisville?
The best I recollect, hon, I remember playing with the neighborhood kids. We played hopscotch, jump rope, hide and seek, and tin can alley, which is probably not heard of now, but we would set up Coke cans and have two at each end of the street. And then we would throw a tennis ball down to try to knock them down to score points. Then we were sent to church every week. When we came home, my mother always had a great meal on the table. Sunday, we had banana puddings, cakes, and stuff like that that you didn't get during the week. I also remember Vacation Bible School. And the part that I remember best is the grape Kool-Aid. Funny how you remember those little things, but that was the best Kool-Aid ever. It's never tasted as good since childhood as it did to me then.
It was probably a special treat also. You didn't use as much sugar during the week, did you?
No.
As you grew up, did you have employment?
Yes, I worked several places in my early years of working. I worked as a hostess at a bowling alley. It was called Pee Wee Reese. I worked at the A&P Bakery, which was a distribution center. We made breads, cakes, and things that went out to the stores. I worked the longest period of time was at Armor Elevator Company. I was a wireman there, reading schematics and wiring the elevators.
Oh, wow. I have a few questions here. So with the bowling alley, even though you worked at the bowling alley, did you get to bowl?
Yes, we got free games. So many free games. When we wasn't working, we could come and get free bowling.
Cool. And then wiring the elevators. That's real interesting. We don't think of all the little details that go into equipment like that. How did you end up landing that job?
Persistence. I was working at the A&P Bakery and got laid off. And I passed by Armor Elevator every time I went to work at A&P. And so I thought, well, let's take a try at it. And so I called the supervisor several times. We were friends on the phone because I just talked to him until he said, I think it's time for you to come on and go to work for us. So after about 2 weeks of hearing me, I showed him I was interested in getting a job. And he was a real polite man. So after about 2 weeks of showing persistence, he took me on and I worked there 17 years till the place closed down.
Wow. Was that a hard job?
The easiest job I ever had. You could sit or stand. All you had to do is learn how to use a tool like a screwdriver, a nut driver, a pair of cutters, and know what size a gauge bar that you needed, whether to use an 80 or a 20 or whatever the schematic called for. You had to know the difference in the weight of the wire. So that was easy to learn.
Did you have different weights for different parts of the elevator, or did it usually depend on the elevator and you used one weight?
Yes, mostly you used one weight.
That's interesting. In the bakery, you mentioned bread. Did you help make other products or just bread?
No, we made pumpkin rolls and sweet rolls, hamburger buns, stuff like that. All I did was help package them. I wasn't into the dough making or nothing.
Oh, okay. You're still living in Louisville, and that's where
Yeah.
you were raised. Did you go away for any amount of time and come back, or have you been there the whole time?
No, I went to Meade County down towards Brandenburg for about 5 years and lived there. And then my husband passed away. And so I moved back to Louisville where I could be close to my kids so they could help take care of me.
What would you like to share about your family?
Well, I would like to share that I had 3 wonderful children, and this was the best decision I made. I lived by myself for a year in Meade County, and then I moved back up here knowing I was getting older. I'm at age 84 now, and I know it's going to come a time when I can't do for myself. And so I've got back to Louisville and learning to live on my own here. And of course, the kids are in and out to help me, and they do all my grocery shopping. And my oldest daughter does my bills for me because she knows how to do them online. I don't know nothing about the computer. They take care of a lot of facets of things for me. My son lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and he comes up as he can. He's a businessman himself and works 50, 60 hours a week himself. So it's kind of hard for him to get here, but he does as often as he can. But the heavy work he does when he comes here. The kids just help me with, well, like Donna, my oldest one, she cuts the material that I sew. I make quilts as a hobby. So every Christmas, I always got quilts for them. And like this year particularly, I've made my whole family. I'm talking sisters, brothers, friends, cousins, whatever. I've made them quilts. At present, I have 46 quilts made and got about 3 or 4 more to go. I think I'll be done then. And that is in 1 year's time. So basically, mathematically, I will say I'm averaging about a quilt a week.
That's great.
Yeah, it's been fun and also challenging.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to the quilts here in a minute, but before we get there, did you want to share how you met your husband?
I met him at the Disney Wiz drive-through restaurant.
I'm not familiar with it.
Are you familiar with the Jerry's Big Boy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was one of those type restaurants, and his cousin, she and I went to school together. And we was out one night, and he was in another car with some friends, and so we met then, and then he kind of like what he saw, let's put it that way, and inquired with her how to meet me, and so she made that possible. So when we actually did get together and talk, he made a date with me for the next night. 5 months later, we was married. I guess you'd say it was love at first sight.
Yeah.
Married for 62 years.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yes. I had a wonderful husband, and I miss him dearly.
Mm-hmm. I want you to think about your great, 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 great grandchildren. How do you think they will describe you?
probably funny because I'm a fun loving person. I'm always coming up with silly actions and stuff, and I play little silly games with them, like who can be the quietest. They don't know, some of the young ones, that I'm using psychology. I'm wanting them to be quiet. And they're very competitive. They will be quiet. I've had them sit for an hour at a time and not talk because they wanted to win the game. And I wanted them to be quiet. So we were both winners.
And what would you like to tell future generations of yours?
Well, I enjoy reading my Bible every morning. And I think that that is one of the key components of your life, that I would want my children, my grandchildren, to copy that after me, because you can never learn too much about the Bible because you see something different every day. And I love gardening when my husband was alive. And this year I put out 3 tomato plants. It's been kind of difficult walking around in the yard, because I get off balance. So I think I'll end my career of gardening this year.
Oh, that's a hard decision to make, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because I did it to honor my husband, because he taught me everything I knew about gardening.
What are some of the other crafts that you have done in the past?
Well, I made little hats, straw hats, crochet dollies, crochet little spreads and stuff like that. But it hurts my shoulder, so I can't do that kind of work anymore. But now I don't call this a craft, but I do walk at church twice a week. And the end of the month, we go out to lunch, which I go with them occasionally. I'm not a big proponent of going out for food. I kind of like my own cooking.
Yeah. Often when my husband and I go out, we get home and think, we could have made that so much better.
Yes. I like the old-fashioned way. And some of the stuff they have on the steam table and stuff, I don't even know what is.
Yeah.
They got too fancy for me.
From our chat the other week when I met you, you mentioned you're a new quilter, and it's fun to know that it's never too late to start quilting, is it?
No. I'm going to say maybe 8 or 9 years I've been quilting. I don't know, but I love it. I have learned a lot and got a lot more learning to do. It's always something new coming up, and always little tidbits that other more advanced people that's quilted longer can show you how to take shortcuts and make the job easier.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Oh, yes.
So who introduced you to quilting?
My sister.
Had she been quilting for a while?
Oh, my goodness. She's quilted since she's very young. She's probably been quilting 60 years. And my mother also quilted. I don't know if you've heard of the fan quilting. Mostly back in those days, they quilted with their hands on a frame,
Yeah.
and did the hand quilting. And they would make a fan with a piece of chalk and tie a string on it and go from one end of that fan to the other. And that's how they kept it straight. I have never done one, but I've been thinking about it. Just wondering if I could do it, because most of mine I do on a regular sewing machine. I don't have a long arm, and a long arm really does some beautiful stitching. But I do the best I can with the regular sewing machine. So I do diagonals, straight lines, crossways, and I make little blocks and stuff like that. Anything that I can turn easily with a regular sewing machine, I do.
Uh-huh. Does your sister live near you, and are you able to get together with her?
Not very much. Her husband has Alzheimer's, so she's pretty tied down with him. Used to be she was too far away. We didn't get time to see each other because it was over an hour drive, so we didn't see each other that much. But now we're about 15, 20 minutes. So we intend on getting together more next year. I'll have to be at her house because she has to stay at home with him 24/7. But yeah, she could teach me a lot.
Yeah. And whether it's a quilt you have made or a quilt that someone else made, do you have a favorite quilt?
Yes, it's called the Dutch Girl and Boy that my mother had the pattern of. And that used to be the craze back in her day. And tiny pieces, it's a lot of work. So I don't do that many of them. I have did a few of them. But every now and then you get a notion you want to make something pretty, and that's one pretty quilt.
It is. Those are real special.
Yes.
And when you're working on your quilts, is there a tool that you are so happy you have?
I would say the most needed tool is a picker because you make so many mistakes. You got to pick thread out and start all over again, you know. And of course, small scissors are essential to cutting threads when you're in tight places.
Yeah. Do you like the whole quilting process, or is there one step that you look forward to more than the other steps?
Yes, I love binding. I practice hard on that. I would say I'm probably more proficient in doing the binding. I do a better job. I can keep my lines straight with that. I've just got an eye for it. But doing circles and stuff in the quilt when I'm trying to sew and stuff, I'm not all that. That's when my picker comes in handy.
Yeah. It's fun to see that binding go on, though.
Oh yes, but my daughter don't like me using the cutters. You know, it's got that round blade that's like a razor blade.
Uh-huh.
She is tops in cutting material. Well, she nor any of my family wants me cutting the material because I have trimmers. So the way I shake, I could easily cut myself. But little by little, I'm inching into doing a little more cutting because she can't be here all the time. And I need something cut, I'll cut it. And she'll say, Mom, you better be careful. But she loves doing it too.
Yeah.
She learned that from her dad because my husband cut material for me when we was in Meade County.
Okay.
And he squared my quilts for me. So she watched him and she can square a quilt real easy and cutting. Sometimes if she gets in a tizzy, she'll say, Oh, I wish Dad was here to figure out how to go about it, you know. But she learned well from him. She does a very good job.
Yeah. I will have to send her information on the AccuQuilt system. I think my sister Lois mentioned it to you.
Yes. I have a Go Baby machine that will cut, you got to buy those dies and you just crank this little handle and it'll cut like 3-inch squares for you and they're precise.
That's what I'm talking about. So you have something like that already.
Yes. I didn't know exactly what you was talking about when we talked before. But yeah, I have some of that.
Okay, good. That makes it nice. Then you're not actually dealing with a rotary blade.
Yes, that's true.
Can you share about your worst quilting experience?
How funny that you should ask. I have a friend that does cross stitching. Her sister in law always did the quilting on the long arm for her and me. Well, she passed away last year. And so she asked me, did I think I could sew her quilts on a sewing machine? I love the old lady. She's 88. And I said, well, honey, I will try. I've named that quilt Nightmare because I have made so many mistakes on it, catching the back up when I'm sewing the front, and there'll be a big, a long string that I have to pick out, and it's actually blocks, but why? It was horrible to the quilt. I said, I don't want more of them. So she gave me 6 squares for me to make me one. Of course, you put your own material with it. But I told my daughter, I said, I'm not going to make me no quilt out of it. I mean, I worked like a dog with that one. Now, there's where crafts come in, I guess. I looked around and decided I'm going to make like a runner to put over my couch with those blocks. I think that will look cute because that cross stitching is beautiful. And then my daughter, Donna, the one that cuts, she has an eye for color. And she matched the color up with the thread that the lady had cross stitched with. It is absolutely breathtaking. And it looks so good on the top. It looks good. She's going to be happy. But with the back, she's going to say, who did it? What for?
I bet that's going to be beautiful on your couch, too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give it a shot.
Why do you continue to make quilts rather than spend your time doing anything else? What is drawing you to continue making these quilts?
I just fell in love with quilting. When I don't have one to do, I'm looking for something to do because you can only clean house so much. I got to be busy. I can't just sit and watch TV. So that's what I do now. I am going to try to make something different next year because all these quilts, I'm kind of burnt out with making quilts, so to speak. Although when I see a pretty pattern, I say, oh, and my daughter does too. Mom, you got to make this one. So I don't know, but I thought of maybe pot holders or I don't know what you call them. Well, it'd be a pot holder, but it's a one piece that you can hold all the way around the pan and you can stick your hands in both sides of it.
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are cool.
Yeah, I may make some of them, but I'm going to do less sewing and more reading next year. That's my thinking.
Yeah. And you mentioned you have made quilts for family. Do you make them for family and friends, or who else do you make them for?
Friends. All the skinny ladies last year got a quilt from me because they was cold natured, just wearing sweaters in church and always talking about they's cold. So I made them all a lap quilt that was in my Sunday school class. I said, if you're skinny, you get a quilt. So that's how I did that.
Oh, that's funny. Can you tell us about what you're working on right now?
The next door neighbor that just moved in about a month ago has just been unbelievably good to me. As I said, I'm older, and he sort of watches after me, him and her both. Water my yard. They say, no, you can't do that. Let me do it. I'll do it. Picking the tomatoes. He said, you don't need to be out here doing that. Let me do it. And he lays them in a chair next to my back door. So all I have to do is open the door and get the tomatoes because he's afraid I'll fall. And he's been so good to me that I'm going to make both of them a lap quilt for Christmas.
Nice.
And put down their kindness. I've never seen, I've had good neighbors, but I've never had neighbors like this one. Just a very attentive, like you would think I was his mother because he's taking care of me in his own way. And she's the same way. Every time that I'm out there, they'll get me by the arm, let me help you. They're just afraid I'll fall. And I don't go out there that much, but when I am out there, they watch me. And he always waters the grass and the flowers I have on my porch. He waters them, and she comes over and deadheads them. I have geraniums, and she said, let me deadhead these for you because I don't want you out here and fall. And so she did that for me twice. And so now I know how to do it. I really didn't even know how to do what she was doing. So it's been very helpful.
What wonderful neighbors the Lord has provided for you.
On both sides. There's a widow lady next to me too. And she'll call every so often, and she'll say, are you doing okay? Do you need anything? And then my son-in-law came in and brought me something from the grocery a while ago, which he always does. Him or the kids won, my girls, they do. But, this was just a little surprise he brought me in. I mean, you just couldn't ask for God's help any more than he has helped me with this. He has made it available for me to have food on my table, groceries in my pantry, and my oldest daughter takes me to the doctor for my appointments, yearly things you have to do, and my youngest daughter is more or less the head chief, I guess you would call her, getting the groceries because she gets A from Z. Whereas my oldest daughter, she just picks up milk, bread, and little things that I run out of.
Isn't it great that we're not all the same? We all have our strengths.
That's the truth. That is the truth. I feel like everybody would know Donna because, I mean, she's always doing something for me. But she's an organized freak. I mean, everything has to be precise, which is good. But I'm not. I wish I could be. But her daddy was very organized, and she just like him. So she knows if it's about time for me to run out of something or getting low on it. She'll say, Mom, check and so and see if you need milk or whatever, stuff like that. It's unbelievable at the things that she'll come up with. Mom, check this, check that. And of course, I told you she writes the checks. Well, she does them online. I can't do that either. And be honest with you, I'm not interested in a computer.
Yeah.
I said, I'd rather save my eyes for that quilting sewing.
Please share a quilting tip.
Well, that would be kind of hard. Just make sure that you try to keep your seams at 1/4 inch, because if you don't, it's going to show up. The more you get off on one row to the next, you keep getting off, you're going to have problems. You're going to have to either pick out or cut off, downsize the quilt or whatever. It can be very frustrating. So that tip would be mine, is make sure you got your 1/4 inch seams good.
That's a good one. Anything else you could think of?
I guess I just praise the Lord. I thank Him for my health, and I thank Him for my family.
Juanita, thank you so much for taking your time to share with me and letting me record your stories.
That's quite all right.
Well, thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You can find more stories on aquilterslife.com or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so each episode will be downloaded automatically. Also, I want to hear about you and your wonderful quilts. Please contact me, Paula Chamberlain, through the website to set up an interview. And as always, thanks for listening.